the 1954 Hudson line is an amazing improvement in performance, possible only because of an epoch-making forward stride in engine design. Long known for pioneering important engineering advancements, Hudson now proudly presents another notable first: instant action engines with super induction. These new engines greatly improve performance in every driving range, and they do it without resorting to fantastic horsepower ratings or sacrificing operating economy. In order to explain how Hudson's new principle of super induction is coupled with instant action engines, we must ask you to listen to a somewhat technical discussion, because it is necessary for you to understand the relationship between a familiar factor called horsepower and a less familiar factor called torque.
When an engine is tested for power on a modern dynamometer, the machine does not measure horsepower directly. It measures the torque of the engine, and from the torque readings in foot-pounds obtained at various engine speeds, the horsepower curve is developed by calculation. In simple terms, torque means twisting effort. When you unscrew the tight cover of a jar, you are exerting torque. Or for a better example, take a man operating a simple winch like this. The lever that turns the central shaft is 10 feet long, and he walks around the shaft once in a minute, exerting a steady pull of 53 pounds on the lever. The circumference of his circular path is 62.8 feet. Therefore, in one revolution, the work done becomes the feet traveled, 62.8, which is the circumference of the circle times the force exerted, 53 pounds, or 3,328 foot-pounds of torque. And to find out the power he develops, we divide 3,328 by 33,000, the number of foot-pounds in 1 horsepower. The result is about 1/10 horsepower. However, if our man at the winch could complete 2 revolutions in 1 minute, he would do twice as much work and develop about twice as much horsepower. But the torque factor of 53 pounds would remain the same. This computation shows that horsepower is a product of torque and revolutions per minute, and that horsepower can increase even though torque remains constant or begins to drop. Torque, not horsepower, is the real driving force. Now, let's look at a typical graph that shows the relationship of torque, horsepower, and road speeds for an average car. Notice that at 50 miles an hour, the torque curve reaches a peak of 250 foot-pounds and begins to drop sharply, but the power curve continues to rise. Now, the reason for the loss of torque is that high engine speed reduces the breathing time necessary for the fuel-air mixture to enter the cylinders. This means that the induction system, which includes the carburetor, the manifolds, the camshaft, the valves, and the combustion chamber, is not efficient. In other words, the engine runs out of breath, just like our man on the winch would if he overexerted himself by trying to make too many revolutions a minute. So the faster we turn an engine, the faster the valves open and close, and the cylinders are not able to breathe in a full charge. As a result, torque, the real driving force, begins to drop off even though horsepower may continue to rise. Engine designers have resorted to various methods of improving breathing. High-speed superchargers help, but they are noisy and temperamental. Others have attempted to provide improved performance by the addition of cylinders or by changing the arrangement of cylinders. Fuel injection is another means of getting a full charge into the cylinders, but there is a sacrifice of economy and flexibility. Overhead valves tend to improve breathing, but they require a very complicated valve operating mechanism that adds hundreds of points of wear. Hudson engineers developed a much simpler and more effective way of improving breathing. It is called super induction. A long period of research and careful testing resulted in certain scientific changes in the shape and contours of the valve area in the combustion chamber. In effect, this gives the mixture a more direct, unobstructed passage into the cylinders. Changes in manifolding were worked out to assist in giving the fuel-air mixture greater velocity and turbulence. And Hudson engineers also developed a new type of silent LD cam to assure the most efficient operation of the valves and eliminate all tendency to flutter at high engine speeds. The result of these improvements is amazing, as shown by this graph based on the Hudson instant action engine. Let's put it alongside the graph we saw a few moments ago so a comparison can be made. You see what's happened? Instead of dropping off around 50 miles an hour, the Hudson torque curve flattens out and continues right into the 70-mile-an-hour range. And there have been gains in horsepower, too. So let's compare the horsepower of Hudson's 1953 engines with the new instant action engines with super induction developed for 1954. And there has been no increase in the cubic inch displacement of these engines. The 1953 Hornet engine with aluminum head and single carburetor developed 145 horsepower. The 1954 Hornet, having the same equipment, develops 160 horsepower. With aluminum head and twin H power, the 1953 Hornet engine developed 154 horsepower. The 1954 Hornet engine, equipped in the same way, develops 170 horsepower. The 1953 Super Wasp engine with cast iron head and single carburetor developed 127 horsepower. The 1954 Super Wasp engine with like equipment develops 140 horsepower. The 1953 Super Wasp engine with aluminum head and twin H power developed 136 horsepower. With the same equipment, the 1954 Super Wasp engine develops 149 horsepower. The Wasp engine for 1953, using cast iron head and single carburetor, developed 112 horsepower. The 1954 Wasp engine with like equipment develops 126 horsepower. The 1953 Wasp engine with aluminum head and single carburetor developed 115 horsepower. The 1954 Wasp engine, equipped in the same manner, develops 129 horsepower.
Naturally, these substantial increases in power and improved torque characteristics are reflected in the performance of all Hudsons for 1954. When you step on the throttle of a new instant action Hudson engine, you get an instantaneous response that is truly amazing. Picture yourself driving the new instant action Hudson engine. You want to pass a truck and two cars moving at about 60 miles an hour. When the road is clear ahead, you step on the throttle. Instantly, you get the fast burst of acceleration that carries you by. That's what instant action means. The risk of passing other cars is the time it takes to go from cruising to passing speed. That's the danger interval. Every fraction of a second you can cut from that interval is safety insurance. In every normal driving range, the response of the new Hudson instant action engines is thrilling. You always get the action you expect whenever you need it. Moreover, all the simplicity, economy, and ruggedness of Hudson's traditional six-cylinder inline design have been retained. And even more important is the fact that instant action and super induction are vital improvements made on the engines that powered the recognized national stock car racing champion for the past 3 years.